serving as your Salem Community College president. Today we're gathered to kick off this incredible venture in partnership, history, and everything that you can imagine. So I'd ask that you stand at attention as we have the Salem County Votech Career and Technical High School Junior ROTC present the colors, and then we'll have the pledge to the flag.
Colors, hope, test, pace, freeze, and colors.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Order, colors, test, pace, forward, march.
Round of applause for our JROTC. They help bring dignity to every event they attend. None of this takes place unless you have government on your side, and I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Salem City Mayor Washington. Please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. Today is the launch of the first project of Salem County Historic Preservation. Salem City holds significant historical contributions to our country since the beginning of time. We believe that it's our responsibility to save that history, to preserve that history, and make educational opportunities for those in our community and around this country as it relates to the historical significance that Salem City has played. Not only are we excited about this opportunity, and we know that historically we have great architecture in this community, we also know that there has been African American contribution throughout the course of this country and the building of this nation. So we not only want to focus on the buildings in this community, but we also want to focus on the contributions that African Americans have played in the building of our country. So we're excited to have educational opportunities presented to our community, particularly to our youth, through this initiative at 67 West Broadway. And as Dr. Gorman said, none of this would be possible without contributions and partnerships through many vast organizations and agencies. And I would just like to take a moment just to recognize and acknowledge some of the partnerships that make today possible. Our lead partner is Stand Up for Salem. We also have partnered with Perry Conservation, the Revolutionary Tours, Salem County College, Salem County Community College, as well as Salem County Votech, and the Salem County Culture and Heritage Commission. Again, we thank everyone for their contributions and their commitment to help revitalize the city of Salem and our historical contributions, not only in the county, but throughout this nation. And we thank you as well for being part of the revitalization as well. Thank you.
That demonstrates where we are at the local level. I'd like now to call upon our great support from the 3rd District, and Assemblyman Talafaro is here today with a few words.
Good morning, everybody. And to echo the good mayor, this is just a beautiful day. You know, as you can see, as I struggle to get up the steps, I had a physical injury, and I do rehab every day. And I look at this building behind me. There's going to be some wonderful rehab that's going to be done in this place. And the one thing I want to tell you is that when I think about my life, making something beautiful, rehabbing a project doesn't happen just by one person. It takes a community. And as the mayor said, from all levels of our government, from the state level down to our county level and our local here in Salem City, it's a team effort. But it's not us. You heard of all, I don't want to leave anyone out, but you heard of all the volunteers and the people that are really making this happen. I just want to say thank you, because there's going to be a lot of hard work. There's going to be a lot of days when people are working here and none of us are here. But when you're doing that work, when you're getting dirty, you're here for a long period of time, just remember that we all thank you. When I first got elected, this was the first street that I drove down. And my colleague, the Assemblyman John Berticelli, told me about the history up and down this street. And you can see what it used to be and even what it is today. But projects that are really going to revitalize this house and hopefully many others throughout this town are just special. So thank you all so much. Thank you all for coming out here this morning, and Godspeed to all our volunteers, and look forward to coming out and seeing the progress as it goes. So thank you so much. Mayor, thank you for having us. To the wonderful city of Salem, to members of the council, thank you so much, and have a fantastic day today. So thank you.
Again, support is essential to what is happening here and what we plan to see occur. And someone who has driven by this place or walked by this place about, 6-7 million times, Freeholder Lee Ware to present the county perspective.
Thank you, Dr. Gorman. Adam alluded to the fact about getting up the steps where, we'll meet 2 hips, 2 knees, back. Maybe next time we can make this handicap accessible. But this is truly a historic day and a beautiful day. As a lifelong farmer, I'm thinking about getting the tractors in the field, and I'm starting my 46th year as coaching the Woody's baseball team. So there's a lot going on right now. But I'm as a liaison to culture and heritage, and I can't thank my boss, Kathy Mills, enough. She does so much. She talk about wearing a lot of hats: economic development, culture and heritage, tourism. She does it all. But you're right. I walked the streets as a young man, and believe it or not, I was young at one time. And mainly walked because this is my hometown. Mainly I walked the streets by this house to check out the girl that lives here, Ann Ogman, who's here today. Remember those days, Annie? But this has been a collaborative effort. There's been so many people who played a part in this. Salem County Historic Preservation and Salem City is the hub. Thanks to the mayor and all he's doing and everything. We have so much history in here. We have so many gyms in Salem. Salem City has been around longer than the great town of Philadelphia, PA. I love this town. It took a long time to go down. It's going to take a long time to come back. But with these kind of efforts, it is coming back. And I want to applaud everybody. My assistant coach, believe it, assistant coach Jack Swain called me this morning, superintendent of VOTEC. He said he couldn't be here today, but he wanted to know he contributed because he had some nets here not too long ago getting the vultures out of the upstairs. So we appreciate all he's done. And you guys did a great job as well. So everybody, I know there's a lot of other people want to talk and everything, but I'm just so proud. This is my hometown. You guys have a good day.
Also, want to acknowledge, although we're kind of cramped on time, but Charlie Hassler, longtime Salem resident and lifelong Salem resident, I should say, and also freeholder, Board of Chosen Freeholders. Okay, so now you've got the government perspective. None of this happens without some degree of expertise. And with that, I call upon Gregg Perry to deliver a few words.
Okay, well, happy first day of spring, ready for a rebirth, huh? But this is the long-winded portion. I want to just explain as briefly as possible what historic preservation is. It's not just fixing the house up. There's purpose behind it. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. Thanks all for coming. Everyone who has come today cares about the revitalization of colonial Salem City. Thanks to all our preservation group and to Dr. Gorman for assembling the group. Special thanks to Superintendent Jack Swain. Although Jack couldn't be here today, Jack and I have several 30, 40 hours out back. We took down a barn, the back part of this house. We secured the house and prepared it for today's event. So we wish Jack could have been here. Unrelated to our Salem project, there's been an educational epiphany has occurred. Jack Swain and I have been working on the implementation of a historic preservation program in the Salem County VOTEC. It will be offering to be entered as a potential elective overlapping the building trades programs. The project date will start September of this year. The program will serve as a model for all other VOTECs in the country, and there's no program like it anywhere. We need a place for the kids. The kids are going into the trades. They don't have a lot of work when they get out. So hopefully we can eventually redirect them back to Salem City, where they come from or where most of them come from. And many thanks to the doctor, John Hohen, our videographer, Life After Television, for our Colonial Trade series and video promotion of the property. There's John. Also, special thanks to the inmates. We had inmates loading our first dumpster for the back porch and other debris a few weeks back. So again, everybody's helping out here, so it's wonderful. I would like to add that we have had donated an entire woodworking mill shop with machines and tools to the city to be located purportedly to the Pennies building once that's restored. And that's going to act as a community center or a county center for people to get woodwork done, reproduction moldings, doors, sash at a reduced rate. And we'll also be training young people and senior citizens there how to create this woodwork. So putting expertise at your fingertips locally. In addition, we're going to setting up to provide certification for preservation carpenters. There's no preservation carpenters within 3 counties of us here, and that's an issue. If you're going to restore historical fabric, you're going to do it right. So if they want to be recommended by our group, we are going to certify them through a series of courses and programs. There is nothing more to say about the dwelling behind me. This is just a historic tool. It will undergo a high-grade, sympathetic restoration using only like fabric and applied craftsmanship standards acquired from preservation certification attained from the UK. For far too long, people here have not understood the benefits of our city's history. That stops today at 67 Broadway. Our group is working side by side with the Honorable Mayor Washington to administer a successful and cultural rebirth here on the first day of spring. To move our city forward, we must concentrate on the strength of our history, the arts, historic architecture, and most of all, the African American heritage. This includes the Underground Railroad and many famous African Americans who have come from the city and through the city to gain national prominence. Although it has not been taken care of for generations, our city that is, Salem City is the first and one of the most important cities in the start of the colonization of America. America started here indeed. Historic preservation is more than saving a building. It's about a community, the people, the economy, the environment and well-being, learning from our past to improve our future. Saving buildings that have played key roles in our city's history and important places that people who have lived here. Historic preservation gets a bad rap at times for gentrification of neighborhoods. A recent national survey shows that historic districts are the most diversified. Young, old, black, white, Hispanic, straight, gay, uneducated, educated, living harmoniously down the street next to each other. It fosters diversity and openness. A common misunderstanding about historic preservation is about economics. It's expensive. Not so. It makes economic sense and good for the community. It's far labor intensive than new construction, and it creates more jobs. So when the money is given to labor as opposed to materials, the more money stays in the local community. It leverages investment indirectly. Historic preservation attracts desirable small businesses. Also, rent in older small businesses are much more affordable for people to move in. Historic preservation acts like an incubator for independent business and is the biggest sector of job growth in our country. Historic preservation, the original green, reduce, reuse, and recycle. Many people think of historic buildings like the one behind me as old and drafty and inefficient, the opposite of green. These old buildings were originally designed with nature in mind for maximum function. Natural ventilation and lighting, operable windows, overhangs, and the orientation to the sun and the wind are paramount with these buildings. And these buildings perform well when they were used as they were designed. but they also perform equally well when adapted to the new green technology. And when that's adapted to them, they can actually exceed or equal LEED certified technological buildings. We must also think about the environmental avoided impact. Materials that were used were organic on this building, high quality, durable, and have already consumed a lot of energy to be produced. Consider raw materials when thinking about the reuse and new construction, and you think about the additional energy we need to produce the new materials. Today, 25% of all materials going into landfills is from demolition of architecture. So if we can cut that down, what a great thing. Historical preservation occurs where infrastructure is already in place. Roads, sewers, parks, schools. It's walkable, it's transit friendly, it supports mixed uses. Today, a green housing development requires the auto requiring new infrastructure to be laid down. And lastly, the cultural and social aspects of historic preservation are quite tricky. To describe factors that bring people to our community and keep people here, it's what you probably wouldn't think of. When I'm up in the main line, I hear different stories, but in community places where community is built around, safety, education, and economics are not the highest ranking factors to bring people to a community like this. Instead, aesthetics, openness, and social offerings were the leading indicators in 54 studies. So hence, the theory that if you're attached to a place, you'll spend more time there, you'll spend more money here, you'll be more productive here, more invested in your community. So this is why Salem City matters. And lastly, we're trying to concentrate on attracting smaller, younger businesses, upward-thinking businesses. We cannot attract the mega companies that are come to our community anymore. Generally, they only provide low wages, poor health care, and they eventually leave, providing us with high unemployment, leaving our families in dismay. And they leave us what? With decaying eyesores as a backdrop. So instead, we need to celebrate the resources that abound around us: historical architecture, African American roots, the arts, and our waterfront, to bring us back to a quality of life that once again will create a sense of place here in Salem City. Thanks. I'm sorry it was so long-winded, but thanks so much.
As Greg alluded to, there's an educational component to this. I want to start by thanking Jack Swain, who when I called and said, "Hey, how'd you like to go to a meeting?" he said, "Sure." Didn't know what he was getting into, and he's kind of been the day laborer down here for a while with it. Today, representing him, we have Jennifer Bates, wave to the crowd, Jen, and Jason Helder, principal, who came down with the students. Integrating the educational side of this has been very important. And I brought a visitor from the 18th century to join us today, Professor Tony Melita.
There's nothing more intimidating than a podium and a microphone, I'll tell you that much. I'm used to walking around my classrooms, lecturing here and there, but I never go near the podium. My students know that. So I'll try to make this as brief as possible. I've been known to be a little long-winded. You know, we talk a lot about the history of Salem County and the history of Salem City. Salem City, did you know, by the way, is the first permanent-speaking English settlement on the Delaware River. It is also the first Quaker settlement in the New World. We predate Philadelphia by roughly 7 years. John Fenwick arrives in 1675 with 42 other passengers. Samuel Nicholson is one of them. He's one of the original 30-plus individuals who commit themselves to emigrating to this wilderness at that time. Sam Nicholson is the ancestor of Anne and Sarah Nicholson, and it's on this plot of land, roughly 16 acres, from about here all the way up to the Salem Oak, that he donates these 16 acres to what will become the first Quaker meeting house here in the New World. The Quakers. The Quakers are an interesting group, the Friends, so-called. My US 2 course right now is going through the Abolition Movement and Reconstruction. And one of the fundamental questions I asked them, did Reconstruction fail the black community in some way? And by the end of this week, they'll either answer in the affirmative or in the negative. It's a fundamental question I think we Americans still ask ourselves today. But the abolition movement is spearheaded by these Quakers, these friends. And here, Abigail and Sarah Nicholson, or not Abigail, Anne and Sarah Nicholson are members of this group of friends. And Salem itself actually becomes a safe haven for those self-emancipating Negro slaves to the south who were actually coming through Salem. There's an underground railroad over there on Market Street and at the Abigail and Abigail and Elizabeth Goodwin House, and then over here we have Anne and Sarah. And after Samuel Nicholson, their ancestor, dies in 1685, the Nicholsons kind of go back into obscurity. They don't really appear much except for in wills and marriage records and probate records. And they seem to be just honest, plain, God-fearing individuals, simply just living their lives. So Anne and her sister Sarah, there's not a lot of history on them. There's a good deal more on Abigail and Elizabeth just up the street, but they would have been contemporaries of the Nicholson sisters here at 67 Broad Street. I think it's kind of ironic that this house sits on the same tract of land that their many greats ancestor, Sam Nicholson, who dies in 1685, donated. You know, as early as 1688, the Quakers, they begin writing and pontificating on the moral repugnance of slavery, of African slavery. 1688. By 1776, any friend could be read out of their meeting house for owning a Negro slave. In fact, Abigail was read out of her meeting because she would commonly purchase slaves from North and South Carolina, specifically families that would have been broken apart, simply to just give them their emancipation. But she was considered somewhat militant in her proclivities and beliefs, and so she was read out of the meeting house just out of the street, up here. I can't help but think that Anne and Sarah would have been, at least in some respect, part of this movement. And by the way, although we haven't found anything yet, I'm still looking. Lack of evidence doesn't mean evidence of lack, right? So we're still doing a lot of research on that score. But Salem County has always been a part of this movement. The first real census was taken in 1790 here, and of the 542 Negro African Americans here, roughly 176 of them were Negro slaves. By 1800, and that's, by the way, about 31.5% of the population, of the African American population that's enslaved. By about 1800, it's 12%. And that number is actually growing, 692, but only about 87 of that 692 are actually enslaved. And by 1810, only 2%. Only 2%. That means that number is dwindling. And it's dwindling specifically here in Salem County. That's pretty remarkable, to be honest with you. And this is really the very beginning of that abolition movement. But you can begin to see the origins of that in this Quaker society, even here in Salem County. By 1800, or by about 1820, there's only one Negro slave, and yet that African American population is growing. It is growing. 1810, it's about 1,066. Only 29 are actually enslaved. That's astronomical in 1810. By 1820, there's only one, and I have not found him or her yet, but my thought is that the only reason why there's that one, and by 1830, that one is gone. That one is gone, because I have a feeling that one was so elderly that emancipation would have killed that individual. I think about an interview by Fountain Hughes in 1949. He said that slavery is unfathomable, but so is freedom too. It's a almost damned if you do and damned if you don't situation. He said that we were turned out like cattle. And what do cattle do when they're turned out into the wild? They die. They die. They're conditioned to do what they're told, to go where they're told, and They have no means of succor, no means of anything. But when given the choice between freedom and slavery, he said, you know what I'd do? If they told me I was going to be a slave again, this interview, he was 101 years old. His grandfather belonged to Thomas Jefferson. He's 101 years old. He said, you know what I'd do? If they told me I was going to be a slave again, I'd get a gun, and it'd end it all right here. And then he trails off and he says, because you're nothing but a dog. He trails off and he says it again, you're nothing but a dog. Right? I can't help but think that Anne and Sarah understood the moral repugnance of this institution. And to be honest with you, that for me is the interpretation of this house. They're members of a society of friends dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. They are contemporaries of Abigail and Elizabeth, just up the street from here. And we know the Goodwin House was on the Underground Railroad. I would not be surprised if we found evidence that this house was also a part of that movement on the way up to Swedesboro. So I would not be shocked by that. There is a lot of history here in Salem County. Not to say that there's no turbulence here. In 1717, on the road behind you, Hagar, the slave, belonged to James Sharon, lawyer of Salem County at that time, was drugged up the street by the high sheriff. Her and her also Negro slave accomplice, both Negro slaves, belonged to James Sharon, supposed to be specifically a cruel master at the time, for the hatchet murder of him. She was implicated in that murder, and then the sheriff drugged them on a wooden sledge up this street, and there, right there by the Salem City Cafe, burnt her at the stake. They hung Ben by the neck till dead, dipped him in tar, and put him on a gibbet up on a derrick pole in the center of town, where apparently he hung there for years. Turbulent, yes. I always tell my students, American history is necessary because, well, look around you. We're all American, right? We're all American. America is an idea. It's not a person. It's an idea. Our history is what binds us together. Lack of common ethnicity means that we are covenanted together one another on this very idea. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and we've been trying to figure out what that means ever since. Barely before the ink was even dry, they were debating what that meant, and the idea of freedom in America. Who hasn't and who doesn't? I'd like to just kind of end with that. History is necessary. It is agonizing, it is sometimes beautiful, and it's always complex. Always complex. So every time you pass this house, think of all those complexities, and think of Anne and Sarah, think of Abigail and Elizabeth, and think of what it cost individuals to put their name, put their livelihood, put everything on the line for a moral conviction. And aren't we all so glad they did? Thanks.
That's why this has to be done, plain and simple. I want to acknowledge one other person from the college, Ron Burkhardt, who does a lot of the legwork associated with projects of this nature, and can't even get into all the details. Bill Clark, who helped get this organized today, and I'd like to call upon our partner in this, the group from Stand Up for Salem, Chris Davenport, representing them today.
Just want to thank you. Just want to thank you all for coming and greet you from Stand Up for Salem. If you think this is kind of an eclectic group, it is. Somebody asked me who they are, and I said, well, I guess they is we. But the person that brought this we together for this effort was Mike Gorman. So I want to thank Mike for bringing this group of volunteers together. So thank you, Mike. We're happy to be a part of this as the nonprofit conduit for any contributions you want to give to this project. It's going to be a long haul, but we feel great about the groups involved, and we're grateful that you're here. And it is matching up with our vision of Salem moving forward and getting economically healthier. Not by discarding our history, but embracing who we are and working to teach the next generation some of these lost trades that went into building things like this. The brickwork, the plaster, the molding, the woodwork, all those things that you can actually make pretty good money now doing if someone were teaching them. And it's part of our vision to do that with the building on, you might have heard people talk about the J.C. Penney building, is what we call it on East Broadway. So that's a building we're working on. So thank you for coming. I can't help but think that just under 20 years ago, I came to Salem for the first time driving up this part of Salem. This is the first part I saw. Not a history buff, not an architecture buff, but I got a feeling, you get a feeling, even not knowing those things, when you see these buildings just kind of pop up out of the water, you know, this is something special. This is something unique I haven't seen before. This is, whoever did this, whoever built this, however long ago, intended on living a whole life here. And so it's kind of fitting, I think, that this group, this eclectic group, identified West Broadway as a place to start, because it's kind of our gateway to the town, and it's what people see. So we look forward to a lot of stories, and a lot of good stories, and making our own history as we go. So thank you.
And anyone who would like to financially contribute to the cause can do so through Stand Up for Salem. There'll be an account set up through them to take care of this. It is tax deductible. And with that, I have to check my list one more time, make sure we've gotten everybody. Folks, this is an exciting prospect. This is the beginning. You're welcome to be part of the revival. Thank you all so much for being here today. Make sure you go out there and have some fun. Which way you were going to face that way?
Yeah, face this way so
You have
we
to
can all
be
get a
on the
good
other side
picture.
already.
So you want to stand behind it?
And
All right,
Jay?
so you want to grab a hold?
And Corby, you want to be on this side?
Make sure that
You
it
got to pull.
And please,
Hey, I kind of count so y'all know when to pull.
Chris,
I kind of count
Mike.
so you know when to pull.
Yeah, Mike, get in there.
please hold the pose, Mayor, for a few minutes here. And where is Greg?
Greg. Tony, you should get in there too. Charlie?
Closer. Move in. Hey. Everyone be friends. Let me know not to cut.
Whenever you're ready.
Wait, not yet.
You only get to cut once.
Right. We had a practice cut earlier, Mayor. It didn't go so well.
I gotta make sure I get over
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. One couple more here with the camera.
All right. Is everybody ready? Okay.